Hybrid productivity systems are the best of both worlds of digital and analog tools to get you where you want to go in life. But do they work? I've used a hybrid productivity system for the last 5 years, and this is my review. If you've been following along with me for a number of years now, well, first and foremost, thank you. Glad to have you along the journey with me. But you've probably noticed that I've gone through tons of iterations and revisions on my productivity system. I first got into a hybrid system in 2019 because I had a life shift that happened, and it made sense for me to start to explore more into paper and the bullet journal. I was finding digital task tools to be a little bit overwhelming to stay on top of because there were a lot of overwhelming things happening in my life. I had kids, I had a job change like I mentioned, and so forth. So ever since then, I have been running with a hybrid system where I'm using a bullet journal like this one alongside some sort of a digital tool. And I've used a variety of tools over the long run. I started off with OmniFocus because that was the best in class digital task management tool, but I struggled with how to actually use both of them together. One was very tactically focused, the bullet journal. The other one was very tactically focused, OmniFocus, and that didn't really mesh all that well together. So I've tried other tools like Todoist, Things, Notion, Obsidian, Logseek, and just about every other one under the sun. And I've learned a lot in this process of what works well and what doesn't work well. First and foremost, I want to highlight that you really do get the best of both worlds when using a hybrid productivity system, but you also get the worst of both worlds. There's a lot of complexity that comes with having a digital tool that you need to manage and a physical tool that you're trying to work off of as well. You can't sync paper back into your digital tool, and you have to copy out of your digital tool onto paper if there's something that needs to go there. And so this takes a lot of extra time. While you do get the organizational flexibility of a digital tool and you get that tactility and calm feeling with a notebook, the fact that you're trying to merge the two together just simply takes extra work. And if you don't have the extra time to either daily or weekly go through and make sure these two facets of your system line up, then you'll start to trust it less. And when you start to trust a system less, then you don't use it as much. That's just the honest truth about it. That was one of the biggest struggles that I've had over the last 5 years, is trying to keep these two systems synced up in a way that makes sense. Another big problem that I've had is the what goes where problem. Oftentimes, I will reach for what is most convenient or available to me in the moment. So what often happens is, like during a workday, I will be taking notes in my notebook one day, and then for a reason on another day, I'll need to take them in my OneNote notebook on my work computer. And then now I have notes in two places. And if I don't go back again and sync those two things up, then I have a divergence of where that information is, and I need to figure that out. It's just a really big challenge to know where things go so that you don't have to go look for it again, or you don't have to spend the extra time putting it from one place to another. One other thing that I learned that worked really well are use cases for these tools. Digital tools in a hybrid system context work really well for keeping high-level information as a dashboard that you'll come back to over and over every single day. Probably the most productive iteration I had of my system was in late 2019 when I was using Notion as a personal dashboard that was very simple in nature. There were no databases, no highly nested page structures or anything like that. It was literally a page that had a list of projects that I was working on, those that were kind of upcoming, those that were done, my yearly theme up on the page as well, and a couple of goals that I was tracking towards, and that was it. I would visit that every day, make sure it was updated. Sometimes I would take notes on projects in there, but then primarily my workspace was my notebook. I would write down my tasks for the day, I would write down my meeting notes for the day, and just move things forward. But where this falls apart is when you start to make it too complicated. On the digital side, it's easy to do so. This was a time frame where August Bradley's PPV system, if you haven't heard about that, it's a very in-depth system that links a ton of databases together. And I was trying to do that inside of my Notion workspace. But what I found is that broke the simplicity of it, that caused me to want to use it. And as a result, I actually quit using it and needed to figure out something else. And I had a hard time dialing it back once I started using it in that way, and it made it very difficult then to simplify that system and use it in the way that I was finding it in a natural flow state. So would I recommend after 5 years a hybrid productivity system to someone like you? The answer is probably not. A full digital system is great when you have a lot of competing deadlines or a lot of different streams of work that you're doing at one time and you need to keep them in one spot. It can be a little overwhelming and you do need to do the work to keep it maintained and updated, but it's a lot easier to do it just in a digital system than to try to flex and flow between both. On the other hand, if you don't have a lot of competing deadlines or you have a pretty regular schedule with how work gets done, a paper system will do you just fine, and you might need to supplement it with some digital tools. But ultimately, your system will live inside the notebook itself. This would be perfect for a content creator or for someone who's at school. I myself have multiple different streams of work that I'm handling, and I'm actually considering, does it make sense to go full in on a digital system again? I'm still undecided at this point. I have found digital systems to be overwhelming, but I have been working on a new concept on how to organize your work inside of a digital system to make it a little less overwhelming. If you're interested in learning the details about that, check out the video over here.